y'all. I am Levi Brickley with the Pursuing Truth podcast, and this is part of my favorite series, the Real Talk radio show, where I get to sit down and interview guests on the podcast about their life, testimony, and how it's applicable to the message here on the Pursuing Truth podcast. On this series, I'm releasing an episode every week for the next month, so there will be 4 episodes from this conversation that I had with my brother, Rusty Pickens, in Southern Indiana, out in his pole barn. I packed up the studio, went from Kansas to Indiana, and we had an awesome conversation about his true American success story, rising through the ranks in a box company, and all of the in and outs of his experiences with family and personal challenges. I believe that you as a listener will be able to pull some type of motivation, some direction, maybe something that inspires you to continue going in your day-to-day life when things get difficult. Rusty did an awesome job, and I was thoroughly happy with the way it turned out. I was not overly happy with the way the video quality turned out, so bear with me on these first 2 episodes. The 3rd and the 4th are a little bit better, but return next week for another episode and enjoy. Yeah.
That's why we're in it together.
What's also interesting about that is I think at the beginning of your career, you never imagined being probably in a leadership position.
Oh, heck no. I mean, if you knew my personality, it's like, yeah, I'll just stay in the background, let things happen.
Yeah, right?
I mean, I grew up in a family of, 11 kids?
Yeah. You're a middle child.
Yeah, and you just watch things happen.
Yeah.
I was probably a pretty quiet kid. I mean, you guys tell me I was a quiet kid.
Yeah.
And partly is because I'm learning from your mistakes. I ain't going to do it.
Right. Let me just sit back and watch. You know, that's kind of my whole thing, too, is like, I say I got to learn from some of your guys' mistakes as the youngest child. So, yeah.
Brock taught me a lot.
yeah, you taught me a lot, too. And I'm sure he would appreciate that even...
It's not intentional.
Even if it was an unintentional bad influence for us, like now looking at where he's at, and, you know...
I'll tell you the other thing that I think he unintendedly taught me was when he came back from prison.
Yeah.
He taught me how to stand up for what I believe, not intentionally. And I'll give you a reason why is because Caleb, he was still a punk kid. You know, Caleb was a button pusher.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, Brock being gone, the things going on with your dad, me and Caleb fought all the time. But when it come right down to it, I won't let anybody do anything to Caleb.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could tell you there's a couple scenarios at school, guys saying, I'm going to beat your brother's butt. I'm like, no, you're not. Yeah. Not thinking, because they knew I fought with him all the time.
I'm the only one that gets beat my brother's butt.
Absolutely. But I remember when Brock came back, I don't remember what Caleb did, but it wasn't anything serious. And Brock got in his face and was about ready to punch him. I said, you cannot come in here and start acting like you can run this place. You haven't been here. You have no idea, and stopped acting like it. If anybody knew my personality, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And so that helped me stand up for the little guys, essentially is what I got out of that. And I didn't realize it at the point, but it helped me get that, develop that. And I think, honestly, the whole situation surprised us all.
Yeah.
It drew me and Caleb closer. And I didn't intend for that to happen. And again, I think God worked it out just so, because he looked how things played out with Caleb. You know, I lived with Caleb prior to me getting married.
Yeah.
And then after we get married, that weekend, that Sunday before that went down, me and Caleb were hanging out playing video games. And it's just mind-boggling how that all played out.
Because what you're saying is that potentially wouldn't have happened with your relationship prior.
Yeah, because if anybody was on the outside looking in through our childhood, I mean, I've given Caleb fat lips.
Yeah.
Because we fought all the time physically.
Yeah.
I mean, we beat each other with fishing poles.
But I would almost say, you know, from my understanding, you know, of course I was younger. I didn't really see too much of it, but you guys are almost like polar opposites. He was an extrovert. You're an introvert.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you get butt heads and.
Yes. And we were always together. And I think because of that, we just tired of each other. But we didn't realize what we had till we got older.
Yeah.
And that's when, it just really clicked for us. And I think our relationship just grew. And I'm not even thinking about what was going on.
Yeah.
But it just drew us closer as brothers because of how much crap we went through together.
Right.
And I didn't even think about it. But, after I lost him, it did a mind job on me. I'm not going to lie. And those that were closest to me knew it. I was probably in my shell for a while, just kind of shell-shocked. But it helped me appreciate the stuff you go through with people.
Right.
And, I kind of played in the workplace. Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with my crew. Those times build that relationship so strong that's when you got a good team. Right. When they know you got their back. Right. And I took that approach through everything I did. Ultimately, I mean, even now I'm running my own plant. Right. I've worked my way to that point. I've started up 2 plants as a higher role, but now I'm actually in charge of the sales force and everything. And it's just mind-boggling where I'm at. Right. No formal education, but it's that commitment to bringing people along with you and make the people above you better. Right. It's not about running people over. It's not a cutthroat thing. It's about building each other up.
And I think, our culture is so pumped with self-esteem and like all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you. And, never about the team.
No.
And so what's fascinating is that here you are, your management is seeing this out of you. And they're like, you know what? We're going to take a risk with this guy because we see something special here. That's what set you apart.
Yeah.
And then in turn, now it plays out with where you're currently at.
Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed to be where I'm at. And, there are a lot of things that played out to get me there that I think God ordained. There's a lot of things that required me to take care of the details, ultimately. Right. And, my current situation overseeing this plant, it's humbling because I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend like I do. So I have to rely on those people that report to me to know what they're talking about. And so there's a lot of trust that goes in that because as you progress through a company, right, the less control you really have on your job.
Right.
I mean, you got to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, you really don't have control anyways. It's an illusion, right?
Yeah.
It's really just, are they working for you or against you?
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's certain, I had a boss one time that tough guy to work for. I mean, he would berate you in front of everybody. And I always learned you praise in public, criticize in private. Right. And he would just tear people down. And so he had no respect to that workforce. And so, but alone times with the guy, he would teach me so much. I learned so much from him. And
so it's like almost opposite.
Yes, it was exactly
I'm going to
opposite.
tear you down in front of people, and then I'm going to build you up in private.
So this paradigm shift is going on with me. Like, what in the world? How do I deal with this? So I thought, this is where I learned how to manage up. Right?
Yeah.
You hear a lot about management, but when you manage up, that's really stretches yourself because this is my boss and all these guys that work for me and ultimately work for him have no respect for him.
Right.
And so I had this conversation like, if you need something, you tell me, let me fix it. Let me address it. You don't have to worry about it. You tell me your problem. I'll go out there. And it took some time for us to get through that because he had some control issues.
Yeah.
But once he learned to trust me, that I was going to take care of it, it changed things. And so it taught me how to manage up. Yeah. And ultimately it helped him look better.
Yeah.
So honestly, that's my approach to work. And its approach to life is push those people ahead of you. Make them look good.
So then you're presented a new opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And how did that play out? Like it's just fascinating, where you're at now. Like
so I jumped through a lot there, didn't I?
Yeah.
So when I was in Wichita, the director of operations there they were acquiring other businesses, and they were done with that because they were tired of buying old culture. They wanted their culture.
Yeah.
So he said, moving forward, they're going to build their own plants and build their own workforce. Greenfield startup is what we called them, right? And they do that in a lot of industries. But they built this plant in Texas, and oh man, it was exciting. Just how it felt in the company, excitement. And I thought, man, I want to be part of that. That is nuts.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, man, is there an opportunity for me down there? He's like, no, not on this one, but I'll remember you for the next one. And sure enough, they opened up the one in Pennsylvania, and he asked me, I'm like, you telling me you want to go from Kansas to Pennsylvania? And that's a mind job.
Yeah.
Because I have no support there. Zero. It's just me and Amber.
It's this giant risk.
Yes. And at that point, Izzy's born. Right? When I find
this out. They got 4.
Yep.
3 boys, 1 girl.
Yep. So I'm like,
you could stay right here because you're making good money right here. You could stay right here and be content and comfortable.
Yep.
But you didn't want to stop there.
No. And, it's funny. I was just talking to one of the guys that worked for me the other day, that there's a certain amount of lack of common sense I have with a lot of ambition. And I think that's what got me where it was. And, common sense says, what are you doing? You got a good thing going. Why would you do that? You have no support. If it goes south, you're in trouble, man.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the lack of common sense played into it. Right. And the ambition took over.
Right. Yeah.
But it played out well for me because I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Taking this plant of just nothing, it was just a field, or, at that point, it was actually just a warehouse built. And we were actually putting all the stuff we want into it, then building these crews to be efficient in what they do. I remember seeing that plant being number 1 in the company, and I was just so pumped up. I'm like, man, I did that. I was a part of that. These guys accomplished this, and I helped them.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, this is just a department, right? But
but it ain't the end.
It's not the end. But I think that stretched us again. It took our relationship to another level. Because Pennsylvania was tough. There's a lot of good things that happened there, but from our marriage standpoint, it was tough. We went through a lot because, one, we didn't have the support system, so we had to rely on each other. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of stupid things in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But, through the toughest times, you grow the most, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened with our relationship. I happened with my relationship with God, because I was angry still. I think partly I was still angry with my situation, my dad, Caleb, my situation with, I say my situation, just life. Everything. Made me angry.
You experience all this growth, and you see all these guys that are building you up, and you have everybody that's supporting you doing what you're doing. How did you keep your ego in check, or did you?
I had moments where it got too much, but God does a good way of humbling you.
Yeah,
he does. And I think partly was, through some of those mistakes I made in Pennsylvania that affected our marriage, was a humbling experience for me, that I don't have my crap together. Yeah. And as soon as I pretend like I do, checkmate.
Yeah, right.
And so, at that time I figured out my priorities were a little off. I need to get them right again. It seems like this does this in life. You're right. You get your priorities out of whack. You got to realign. It's good to do that. It's just different maturity levels, right?
Yeah.
When I first find out that I'm having a kid, I was really immature. Yeah. But reality check, I don't have my crap together. I need to get it together. So, and then, other things happen in life. I got it. This constantly happens every now and then. It's just part of growth as a person.
Yeah.
And so, when I approached Amber about this opportunity in Ohio, she didn't want to go, because at that point, we had built a good support group there. We had lots of friends, great friends, a good church.
Yeah.
Our neighbors were awesome. They fit well with our kids, and they all hung out with each other. So it was really a good support system we created. Mm. And so when I approached her on this, it's like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear. I don't want to do it. I'm like, well, we need to pray about it, right? Because I feel led to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to know you feel that way. And it had to be something we agreed upon.
Right.
If we didn't, it wouldn't gonna work.
Mm.
And we learned that through Pennsylvania too. If we didn't agree upon it, it's not gonna work. I'm glad we didn't just let those trials separate us.
Yeah.
Again, she had every right to do that, but it didn't separate us. It just grew us stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to Ohio. I mean, I
now
think
now you got another promotion.
Yes.
So your promotion to Pennsylvania was production supervisor or manager?
Well, it was the same thing I was doing in Kansas, but it's at a bigger plant.
Okay. So you were production supervisor in Kansas, and then Pennsylvania production supervisor, and now they present you another opportunity.
Yes.
What was that?
The whole plant.
The plant manager.
Yes.
So now you're like, here this guy is starting from a temp agency.
Yep.
8 years in, somewhere in there, 8 years.
So that was, I went to Pennsylvania 2011. I went to Lewisburg 2014. Yeah.
So in less than 10 years, now you have the opportunity to be a plant manager.
9 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
It was almost 9 years to the day, because I want to say it was March in 14 that I was there. Yeah.
That's crazy. And then so you took that job and moved to Ohio now.
Yep. And that was fun. It was fun for me from a career standpoint, just being a part of that different aspect of seeing the whole plant blossom.
Mm.
I love seeing growth.
Yeah.
Whether it's in me or others, I love it.
Mm.
When I see growth, that means we're getting better.
Yeah.
And again, production wise, number one.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And,
Right.
you know, we set records in a startup plant at that time on how quickly we started making money. At that point, that wasn't in the culture for startup plants by any means. And we did it.
Yeah.
And that was just a whole lot of fun. Just, I felt like as a team, it was clicking well. You know, there's still some bumps that happen to that. That's just part of business. Mm-hmm. You know, you get better. Honestly, they say typically in a greenfield plant, it takes 10 years to establish it.
That's crazy.
And
you're breaking records starting.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so much fun. It was absolutely fun. But it was going so fast. I mean, I even think about, you know, Pennsylvania. That was 3 years. I was not planning on being anywhere in 3 years.
Yeah.
In a promotion like that. Yeah, I wanted to grow, but I didn't think it'd happen that quick, because most of the guys in this arena have been doing it 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm 9 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, what is going on? I'm wide-eyed, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I in Lewisburg, I felt like, man, I could do more.
Yeah.
I'm having so much fun with this.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of things played out that, you know, I felt like this opportunity now that I'm in Indiana, different company. Yeah. Now I'm overseeing all the operations and the sales and design and everything of this plant, even a bigger role. It's daunting at times, right?
What?
It's overwhelming.
So you're plant manager in Ohio. You were there for 4 or 5 years, and then you have this opportunity to step outside of this country, of this company that has supported you all the way through, has basically gave you the experience to get to where you were at, and now you're breaking that off. How did that feel inside?
At that point, I felt like we were going 2 different directions. The company was not going the same direction I originally signed up for.
Yeah.
So, and I say that because, again, I'm a temp that grew up throughout the company, so I understand those guys that are doing it. And I felt like we lost that as a company. They become numbers.
But not only did the company become numbers, as in just the plant, but it became the number 1 company in the world for recycled paper.
Yeah. Yep. But I will say that.
So they lost their way in all that success, kind of. Maybe.
It's tough because at some point you get so big that it's hard to keep your finger on the pulse. It takes a lot of trust in your team. And I will say there's some great people in that company, and I won't take anything away from it. I won't take anything from what they did for me. They're still doing that for other people.
Yeah.
There was some other conflicts that I had. I'm not going to go into that on here. That just tell me it's a good time for me to take a step aside. And partly, honestly, I could have grown there again. Absolutely, I could have. But part of me,
because you were looking at GM coming.
Yes.
up. I mean, you were looking at. I mean, sky's the limit at this point for you. Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? Have I pigeonholed myself sticking with one company?
Yeah.
And I needed to see, is this company got me where I'm at because of, which I knew better. Is it because that they are just fast tracking me and I'm getting in over my skis?
Yeah, yeah.
Or is it because I do have the ability to do what I want to do? As far as growth and establish a plant the way I feel like is the right thing to do. And so I thought, it's a good opportunity for me to really test myself and say, yes, I can do it. It isn't just a system.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a certain amount of that in me. Now, again, that wouldn't have mattered had Amber not been along for the ride. If she would have told me, nope, I don't feel like this is the direction we're going to go, I'd still be in Ohio. That's the reality of it. Even the kids are part of that decision now.
I did a episode a few weeks ago with my buddy Dalton Rumley, and that was one thing we were kind of talking about in regards to success. You're experiencing all of this success, but your foundation is your family.
Absolutely.
And so, like, to truly experience like what that success is like to be happy, healthy, and loved.
Well, and that's just it. How do you measure success in your life?
Yeah.
And ultimately, the only way you're going to evaluate that is by what is your core built on, right? If your core is built on making money, guess what? You're going to find a success.
Yeah.
If your core is built on relationships, how do you define success? It's going to change.
It's subjective to the person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's tough was when, as a culture, the culture has their view of success and project that on everybody. And that's never going to work.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have a bunch of people think that's the way I got to do it, instead of thinking, who am I and how do I say I'm making myself better?
Yeah.
Right? That isn't things.
Yeah.
99.9% of the time, things aren't going to get you what you want.
Oh, well, and coming from the guy that's sitting here, he's got a good salary.
He's got a good barn.
He's sitting in your barn, got a good family, and you're kind of at this crossroads. I would almost say that you've experienced all of this success, but now you got to make a decision on what's best for you personally, what's best for your family, and what's best for your career. And I think that those moments in our lives are very crucial on the decision that we make to how we actually feel about ourselves and how we go through life with a sense of joy and not regretting the decision that we made.
I'll tell you what really opened my eyes to what was going on when we moved here was Aiden. Aiden's my oldest boy.
Yeah.
I want to say, when was that? It was last fall. He got baptized. And they did a cool little video on it. And in that, he talked about how he ended up here in Indiana. Obviously that dad, going with dad, right? But his approach, his view on it, it just it kind of hit me hard because
I remember watching that video. I was like, wow, I was so proud of him.
Well, his comment that dad's work life was stressful and he felt like it was good for me to get away. And I'm thinking, okay, I did something right because, I think as a parent, you're always questioning, am I doing this right? Okay. Yeah. But when he took himself out of that situation and said, dad needs this, I was just shocked that at that time he's
17.
Yeah. Already seeing that. And I'm like, that's humbling.
Yeah.
It was wild.
that it is. And I'm extremely proud of who Aiden is becoming.
Yeah.
And it's just
shoot, all those kids.
It's insane. It's just I can never get past it. You know, looking at you, being a little brother, and you know, I've always looked up to you, Rusty, and what you've been able to achieve and do. I've always thought that that's something that I would like to do is to move up in a company. And, you know, you were really the only brother. I mean, we have Bill, but
yeah,
but you were the only brother that was like making it happen, you know, cause we lost Caleb and Brock wasn't quite there yet. Gosh, I'm so proud of him too. You know
what's funny is I look at all those kids and, you know, just kind of, I was standing in my kitchen today, listening to Mom, and just thinking about this. I'm just thinking about what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Each one of us kids has a passion.
Yeah.
Right. And we show our passions in different ways, and out of that is our success.
Yeah.
And if you go by that world standard, right? Some of us aren't successful.
Yeah.
But I totally disagree. Every one of us is successful.
Yeah.
Because of where we're at with our passions and what we're doing with it.
Well, and our awareness of it.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yes.
Because it's almost like I can't have these conversations with 3/4 of the world.
Yeah.
But these are the conversations that people refer back to, and they're like, whoa, I got to think about my own life. You know, I got to think about where I'm going now. And that right there, in talking about passion, that's really where the whole podcast comes from.
I see it.
I love it. And I never would have thought we'd be sitting.
I know.
in Southern Indiana.
When you told me you were doing this, I'm like, this is kind of awkward.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of this. And, you know, I thought, well, good for him.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, I'm glad he's stretching himself.
Yeah.
And, man, look where you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not done.
No,
you're not done.
Like, you know, I thinking about the first year of podcasting and the first 40
I was very
episodes.
nervous about giving you any type of criticism.
Really?
Yes, I was.
Why did you feel that it would be difficult for you to criticize me?
I don't think you're ready for it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you had one episode. I was fuming mad at you. You probably know which one that is.
I know exactly which one it is.
You know which one it is.
Because I refer back to it, and I'm like, that is not me.
Yes, and I just wanted to chew on you.
Yeah, yeah.
But I was like, you know what? He's going to learn from this.
Yeah.
He's going to have to learn from his own failure on this one.
Mm-hmm. And I've talked about that episode, and I've said, you know, I struggle with, do I take that down or do I just leave it there? And when somebody comes across it and approaches me about it, then I
get that.
It's like this like, keep it there so that people know that there's a sense of growth, or take it down and cover it up.
Yeah. Here's my approach to this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's just like what I did to Amber in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There's no covering that up.
Right.
So what do you do with it? It's a teaching tool.
Yeah.
Not just for myself.
Yeah.
For my kids. I don't hide what I did.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was wrong. And it's an opportunity for me to grow from it and help others grow from it too.
Yeah.
Right? That episode was wrong.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity, not just for you, but I think we live in a culture where mistakes, you're only allowed one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's defeating.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to make mistakes. We're people.
Right.
Right. And this goes back to building each other up and helping each other. You're going to make mistakes. It's what do you do about it?
Well, and I think too, the hardest part about being a Christian is that I can't make mistakes. Like in society's views, I'm this like, I'm the pinnacle of what a moral standard should be. And so if I'm not that to these people,
No,
I'm
Jesus
failing.
Christ is.
Yeah.
Well, and our job is just to point people to it.
Right.
We'll never be that.
Well,
That's the hard part,
we're
right?
not that, but we're an example of that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so we're supposed to be a
Yes.
living example of that. So when we fail, the perspective of us is like, who is this guy?
The hard part I have is I get the non-Christian perspective on it.
Yeah, me
The
too.
Christian perspective on it is where I struggle,
Yeah,
because we should know we're going to fail and we should be there to help each other up.
right.
Instead, we condemn,
Mm-hmm.
and it causes more separation in the church.
Yeah,
And granted, there are consequences to our actions, no matter what, good or bad, there's consequences.
yeah,
The question is how we support each other through those consequences,
mm-hmm.
right? And we live in a culture that doesn't understand love.
Mm-hmm.
Love has good and bad consequences to it.
Yeah,
I mean, look at Brock.
yeah.
Mom had hard love with him.
Mm-hmm.
Had she not, where would he be? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can tell you it's helped him get him where he's at.
Yeah,
You got to have hard love.
mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you don't have love.
Right.
And we confuse that in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing in the work life, right?
Yeah,
It's not one strike, you're out. I don't believe in that.
yeah,
And honestly, it goes back, I'm not the best person for this job. These people I work for gave me this opportunity. And I have people working for me, probably aren't the best person for the job. But they're who I have. How can I make them better?
right.
How can we make each other better? And if they know I'm not trying to look to get rid of them and replace them, instead I'm trying to help them, man, what kind of culture is that?
Right.
That's culture people want to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they know I can fail, but it's okay. I'm going to make myself better.
Yeah. Something everybody, I think, could probably take away from this episode.
I hope so.
That's always the hope.
Again, I have failed in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't sit and wallow in it.
Yeah.
You learn from it, and there's times where there's not much to learn, right?
Mm-hmm. Seems stagnant,
Yes.
dull.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you stay with it regardless how you feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through this phase of my life where, as a Christian man,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
I was just going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, I need to get out of this.
Yeah.
And I would read the Bible. I would be listening to sermons. I would not get out of it. And finally, I heard this one sermon that love is not a feeling. Love is a choice,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
whether you feel it or not,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? Amber showed me love,
Right.
right? It wasn't based on her feelings.
Yeah. It was action based.
Yes. It required intent regardless of how you feel. It's crazy, right? Just how much we distort love.
Yeah.
Nowadays.
Yeah. Man, that's a whole.
Yeah, it's a whole other.
That is a whole thing. But your marriage, I think, says something to a culture where we see 50% of marriages fail,
Yeah. Well, look,
and many
How many
things of
men-
what you've been through.
how many men don't want to get married now? Levi.
I still, I would love to be married.
But it's scary from a man. Just speaking from a man's standpoint,
Yeah.
I could see why guys are scared of it.
Yeah.
But
It's like the role of the man is so under attack, and we're so polarized on one direction or the other. I've talked about it from the feminist to the masculinity perspective, and not having this biblical view of what a man's role
I'll
is.
tell you a
and female role.
funny thing about my marriage.
Mhm.
Amber was a strong believer that women should be in the same roles as men.
Yeah.
And this was our healthy rub,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right.
You got to
And,
have that. Both
yeah.
of you got to have that.
So I asked her to be a stay-at-home wife. Right? That in this day and age, it's not something that women feel as value.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had to show her, even though I feel like I am the leader, right, in this house, her value is still that important. Yeah. And if I didn't do that, this healthy rub we have would not be healthy.
Yeah. It's like I often say, you know, going back to our childhood, I often say that the problems within our culture derive from men.
Yes.
And it's our responsibility as men to own it.
Yep.
Doesn't matter your background, can't be a victim to it. Oh. There are things in your life as a man that may have happened to you that just you naturally are a victim to it, but you don't own the victimhood. You express through the victimhood that you overcome and find it in the suffering in those moments that you apply those to your life to where they are now a motivation to be a good representation of no longer a victim.
I'll tell you what, in high school, I was a train wreck.
Yeah.
And mom tried to give me a lot of help through counselors or whatever. But there was a lady at the church, wonderful lady, since it's passed, but she was an awesome lady. But she told me, she says, you know, life circumstances can make you bitter or better. Right? And, you know, at that time, I'm like, I don't want to hear this crap. Have you seen what's going on at home? This makes me so mad, right?
Yeah.
That type of attitude. But, you know, as I matured a little bit and understood, okay, life's going to do what life does.
Right.
It's how I react to it. Right? You know, there's times in both of our lives here that sucked. I mean, you losing your dad, that's terrible. No matter what type of person he was, that sucks.
Yeah.
But you didn't wallow in it. Instead, you learn from it. Make yourself better. Your dad taught you things, whether he intended to or not.
Yeah.
And
whether they were from a negative standpoint or they were, you know, turning the negativity into positivity.
Yes.
That my example of a man was somebody I didn't want to be. And I think that any time that we're in a difficult situation, that's the way to walk away from it. You know, even with Caleb, losing Caleb, it's like, look at it like, yo, I got the best relationship that I ever had with Caleb in those last 6 months of his life.
Yeah.
What a freaking blessing.
Yeah.
But it also shows just how quick life can go.
Absolutely. You know, my wife has had a rough year. She lost her dad this year.
Yeah.
And, you know, her dad fought his whole life drug addiction, fought alcoholism. But, you know, what I can appreciate about her is, you know, these last 10 years of her life, she's tried to meet him where he's at. And she understood he is what he is, but meet him where he's at. And he's changed a lot in the last 10 years prior to his death. That I think because of her approach, their relationship was so much better than what it could have been. And I think that moment that he's gone still hurts.
Yeah.
But
there's a sense of peace.
Yes.
Joy that you got to.
But if she would have stayed in that victimhood, she would have never experienced that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's great to see how she's come along in this and taught me things through it.
Yeah.
But you stay in that victimhood, you're missing out.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that that's going to lead into kind of what we're going to get into later. But, man, this is awesome. I'm so happy that I literally called Rusty yesterday and I'm like, hey, by the way, I'm coming to Indiana with mom, just out of nowhere. And do you want to do a podcast, by the way? Because I'll pack up the studio. And so here we are in the garage.
The funny thing is, I'm not on any social media.
Yeah.
I don't do any of that stuff. So it's kind of a foreign thing for me, other than I listen to these, you know, guys that I feel like are almost celebrity type. And I'm just like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, I listen to yours.
Yeah.
And I guess it relates to me differently because you're my brother, and I don't really put that into thinking that there's thousands of people out there that are listening. And it's just a weird thought, but
it is crazy. You know, I think about this all the time. I'm like, this is the only way that I could tell my story.
Yeah.
And I mean, to a generalized person.
Yeah.
Not the people in my circle, but a generalized people, and bringing people together on it, and doing this like with you is like somebody's going to take from this. You know, that's important.
What's funny is I would think, I don't know, I think of a small family, how tight things are, even like with my kids. How I think, man, we do everything together, right?
Yeah,
we've been through life together, but yet how much different perspectives are even in that. So I think about, as I'm listening to your podcast, and I hear Brock, and I've heard Annalise, hear Mom, and just the different perspectives on the way they went through life, like I went through life. Yeah. And it's like, man, we're this close, yet it's just so much different.
It's fascinating because, I've learned so much about the family by doing by doing this. But it pushes that conversation,
I guess my point in saying that is, if anything in any of this, what I feel is done to our family, it's just been very insightful.
Yeah.
And it's just been fun. And I hope other people get from that just there's insight, just even in our own paradigm shift in our own close-knit family. On what this is bringing out. It's just intriguing.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah, exactly. Right? What is next? I'm ready to go where God takes me.
Yeah.
And your story of success, or whatever you want to call it. So whatever you want to call success. If you want to call that success, call it success. But
you know what I call success?
What's that?
4 kids and a wife. Yes, I have this barn. I have a nice house. I've got a nice piece of property I love. It's very peaceful out here. But none of this would have made possible had I not had that support.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife.
That drive, it gave you drive.
Yeah, but you think about what I've dragged them through.
Yeah.
And how resilient they've been and supportive. I mean, ultimately, my wife is the biggest champion I've had. Mm-hmm. And, I can get into this later, but I remember when we went to Pennsylvania, and she's my biggest champion, right? And she got on Facebook and was giving me my props, which I'm not on Facebook, so I had no idea she was doing this.
Yeah.
About, I'm so proud of where he's come, blah, blah, blah. And my dad got on there and saying, thanks for taking away my grandkids. And I'm like,
what a blow.
She told me this. I'm like, don't do that. Don't ever. No. I got fuming mad. But then again, I got back and I thought, her heart is amazing. Right? And if it wasn't for her heart, this has been tough. I probably would have walked away early. But she challenged me to get through some of this stuff, and she helped me get through some of this stuff, whether she's in that building with me or not.
Gosh, that's so good. Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay.
I know it ended abruptly. There was no good way for me to make a cut to just have a real smooth transition into the next episode, but maybe it's a little bit of a cliffhanger for you, so you'll return next week. You guys make sure that you subscribe here on YouTube, follow us on Spotify so that you're notified when a new episode is released. Please leave a Apple Podcast review, as that will increase the analytics, get people to listen to these awesome messages that we're providing on the Pursuing Truth podcast. And you guys have a great rest of your week. Don't forget to return next week to another episode on the Real Talk Radio Show with my brother, Rusty Pickens.